Hello and welcome to the Golazzo America YouTube channel. You guys know what to do. Jimmy tells you every week, hit like and subscribe and drop your comments there in the live chat. This show, of course, is for you guys, so we need to hear from you. So let's get rolling. Hello and welcome to Call It What You Want. I'm your host this week, Tony Miola, alongside World Cup veteran Benny Feilhaber, Jimmy Conrad, Charlie Davies. They're off in another continent doing big boy things. Benny working on the UEFA B license, so they got us for this week here. Got a lot of things to get to over the next hour. Of course, Mauricio Pochettino named his 60-man roster, so we absolutely have to talk about that. Be sure to drop your comments in the chat there. We'll get a little weekend roundup of the Americans abroad. We put a couple trophies in the cabinet this week, so that's always a really good thing. And U.S. Open Cup, we got a lot of coverage. Of course, we got it right here. All the games across Paramount Plus. 2 games tonight. Benny and I will be on the coverage of that with Mike LaHood, Jillian Sakovits, and then 6 games tomorrow night, including 5 of those in our Golazzo show. We'll do a little whip around. Myself, Benny, of course, Nico Cantor will join us then. Jillian will host that show. Again, all the games available on Paramount Plus. And we got a little contract extension to talk about with Greg Vanney in MLS. So that's what we got going over the next hour. Happy you guys can join us here. Benny, first off, what's happening, man? It's you and I for the week while those guys go do whatever they're doing right now.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing over there doing the coaching thing. They should have asked me about it, and I would have let them know. Just stay put, stay behind the mic. The coaching thing is tough, but no, it's good for them to go over there and get that coaching licensing and whatnot for whatever they're looking for in the future. But I'm here in Charlie Davies' shrine. I got his jersey back here. I'm trying to keep the seat warm for him. So I'm excited to be here, and let's get to everything you just talked about.
Yeah, by the way, Jimmy's taking this TST coaching thing way too serious, man. He's the only guy on the sideline with a UEFA B license.
He's trying to win that million.
Yeah, yeah. All right, well, speaking of coaches, we mentioned Mauricio Pochettino. He named his 60-man roster. I'm sure most of our viewers saw it. We'll get over some omissions in this, some additions to this. Some people you're surprised about, of course. What do we got here? 6 goalkeepers named into camp. A few new defenders coming in, including Tristan Blackman, who's in camp, who's earned his way through the Vancouver Whitecaps. There was some discussion about him potentially looking at his Canadian citizenship. Jesse Marsh talking to him. In the midfield, Brendan Aronson and his brother Paxton come into camps. I thought that's pretty interesting. Of course, the forwards are always going to be a conversation. But when you saw this 60-man roster, what jumped out at you?
Well, look, first we got to understand it's a 60-man roster, right? We're not down to the 23 or 26 that'll actually play in the Gold Cup. But 60 men, there's a lot of players on there. Sure, there's some notable omissions, but what's the question marks there as to why some of these guys were left out? There's the Club World Cup coming up as well. So a lot of questions, more questions than answers. But look, this is our job to kind of look through the notable omissions and the new guys in the 60-man and kind of be pleasantly surprised and maybe disappointed in some regard. But a lot of names to go through there, Tone.
Yeah, we'll go through some of them and get some thoughts on. Let's go through those omissions first. Of course, I think we kind of knew Weston McKennie, Timothy Weah, they were going to be out of this. We didn't know what was happening with Gio Reyna. Of course, he's still on the roster at Dortmund. We don't know if that's going to be the case moving forward, but certainly a guy that people would have looked at in this particular tournament as it being important. Right? Important for him, important for Mauricio Pochettino to get a better feel of who he is. He doesn't get a lot of opportunities to see him at the club level. Into Jonathan Klinsmann, we had a discussion about him and potentially coming into this. I know you had him. I'm sure you had him right on your team of the year for European players. And Ethan Horvath, who went through a period of over 20 games where he didn't play. I think it was 26 games he didn't play, and now he's played a series of 16 games, has been in with the national team. What sticks out for you when you look at this graphic and these names here?
So for sure, Gio Reyna is the one that sticks out to me, and I want to preface it by this. Look, Gold Cup is always interesting. Every year, it's a little bit different because of how we want to utilize it, right? I can even go back to when I was playing in Gold Cup. 2007, we had our A team. You know, everybody was there. We were trying to win it. We were trying to get into the Confederations Cup that year. And then fast forward 2 years later, in 2009, we weren't playing with our full team. It was more of getting some younger players the opportunity to shine, to see, are they capable of making the jump into the full team? And so I think this is the first question that we're starting to see answer, because we see it's there within that 60-man roster. Sure, there are some newer guys in there, but all the top guys are pretty much there, obviously with the notable omissions that we just talked about. So we assume that we're going to see our full team, with it being 1 year away from, you know, the biggest World Cup in our lifetime, at least in my lifetime. I mean, 94 was pretty big, but that was what, 22 years.
Different.
It was over almost 30 years ago now. So definitely different. Now we're at a different point in US soccer, and we're playing, you know, the biggest World Cup ever to be put together. We want to have a good showing, and we haven't had good showings up until now. So the Gold Cup becomes our last opportunity to really try and put, you know, our best foot forward and have some confidence going into it. I would assume we see our A team, and then we talk about those omissions. And sure, there's the Club World Cup for Juventus, for Dortmund and Gio Reyna. We don't know where Gio's going to be. I would have loved to see him on the 60-man roster, so that it allows, you know, okay, let's see where he goes. Where is he going to end up playing club football starting in the fall, at the end of summer, and then make the decision whether it's beneficial for him and the national team to get him into the Gold Cup. I think that's the biggest, you know, disappointment for me. I think Gio Reyna's got a lot of quality. Obviously, we haven't seen it with enough consistency up until now, but it would have been great to have one more opportunity with the national team before the World Cup in a tournament style of training and games. So disappointing there.
So a couple things come to mind just listening to you talk. First off, Gio Reyna, 24 appearances for Dortmund this year, 5 starts, 2 goals on the season. 24 sounds like a lot, but the reality is there weren't a lot of minutes under his legs, right? When you break it down. And we know he needs, if he's going to be a starter in this group and get back to that moment where the coach says, and in this case, Mauricio Pochettino, you're the guy, you got to be playing at your club all the time. We've been talking about this ad nauseum for a year and a half now. That beckons the question. Well, first off, I think there's an obligation to the national team to leave the players that are in the Club World Cup, officially in the Club World Cup right now, off the roster. So that's the first thing. But it begs the question, and you know, you've been most recently a manager, so I'll throw it at you here. If you got a guy like Gio Reyna, and even if Dortmund allows you and says to you, "Hey, Benny, I know you need to see Gio a little bit. You want to use him in the Gold Cup. We're going to let him go. I know these are made up conversations, but I think educated guesses, right? We're going to let him go to a new club." As a manager, what's your obligation to Gio Reyna to go, you know what? And we saw Bruce Arena do this quite a bit during his time with the national team. Hey, Gio, it's time for you to go to your new club and settle in. We don't need you here right now. Go do your thing, right? Go get settled in. Instead of come to a Gold Cup, you're away from your new team, whoever that is, and you now have to go into a camp maybe a week or two that guys have been around already. You know, Benny, you miss all of those moments, right? You miss those moments at the dinner table, in the elevator, when you're messing around on the team, but like all those little moments that build camaraderie within a team.
Yeah, not only that, but the big moments throughout preseason on the training field, right? Because if he's going to stay in Europe, and I know there's been talks about potentially coming to MLS and playing, you know, a bigger part of a team and being, you know, the guy, which I don't see a lot of negative in that as well. But if he's going to stay in Europe and, like you talked about, be a big part of a team, play more than 5 starts, right, as he did for Dortmund this season, preseason is essential. I mean, you're a new guy. You want to show the coach that you are prepared to fight, to earn your spot, that you're going to be, you know, counted on and dependable. And so I do think that would be critical. Now, having said all that, if I'm the coach of the national team and I think Gio Reyna has got a spot on the roster, I think that's a conversation, right? I wouldn't make the decision for him, even though maybe that might be the right decision. I'd have a conversation and tell him, look, this is how I see you. this is what you've done with the national team. This is what you haven't been able to do. I think you have more in you. What's the best pathway right here? What are you thinking? Where are you going to go potentially? And then kind of make that decision. If we can push that decision a little further down the road and stick them on the 60-man roster before we decide who's on the 23, 26-man roster, I think that would be beneficial for everybody. But maybe that conversation led to kind of what you're saying. Hey, wherever you land, it's going to be better to, integrate with the team, have a full season under your belt, hopefully starting every game and being a big part of whatever team he ends up on. And so you leave him off the 60.
Yeah, and of course, we got to get past the stat that we have with him, right? He's had more starts with the U.S. men's national team than he has at the club level at Dortmund. He's had 14 with the national team since the 22 World Cup. And then that's got to be flipped on its head, right? There's no way that could happen. All right, I'll take a swipe at the goalkeepers here. Chris Brady, Matt Freese, I'm happy he's in. Diego Cochin, Patrick Schulte, Zach Steffen, Matt Turner. I don't know that there's any surprise in there. Jonathan Klinsmann was, I think, a guy that they probably scouted. We've spoken about him a couple times here. We actually had Jurgen Klinsmann on a couple weeks ago. You can go back and check those episodes out on YouTube. And I'm not surprised. I also wouldn't be surprised, Benny, if he's on the radar, right? And I'm sure that he is. I'm sure Mauricio Pochettino and Tony Jimenez, the goalkeeper coach, have him on the radar. So we'll leave the goalkeepers where they are because we don't have a lot of guys that are playing right now. You had Jonathan Klinsmann on your Americans Abroad Team of the Year.
Well, it's like you said, most of the top American goalkeepers are playing in MLS now, right? And so I think that's what we're seeing there with the lack of quality out there. And look, Jonathan Klinsmann had, I think, a really good season. I didn't watch every game in the Serie B, but he was, starting on a team that got to the promotion playoffs. They lost in the first round there of the promotion playoffs. But he's had a really good run, and for all intents and purposes, he's playing well in Europe. And so that there's something to be said. And I think the fact that we're talking about him as a notable omission proves that he's probably on the radar. I'm assuming that people are watching and understand that he's there, and he's just got to continue doing what he's doing. And look, maybe in a year from now, we're talking about promoting from Serie B to Serie A, and then we're really throwing him on this list, and that will be a much bigger omission than it is today.
Yeah, and according to Jurgen, and by the way, Charlie and Jimmy both had Jonathan Klinsmann on their team of the season last week during Call It What You Want. He's on the radar for a couple of Serie A teams, some Bundesliga teams. So we'll see what happens there. But he certainly has gotten himself back into the picture right now. Defenders: Tristan Blackman, Vancouver Whitecaps, has made a name for himself over the last couple weeks. George Campbell comes back into camp. Carter Vickers, Serginho Dest, good to see him with Pochettino. Fossey, Alex Freeman, I'm really high on him. I don't know how much you've seen of him. Orlando City, the right back, comes from an athletic family. This kid can play. Nathan Harriel, Dewan Jones makes the move to San Jose. He under Bruce Arena, he gets back into camp, as well as Christopher Lund, left back. McKenzie, Shaq Moore, Tim Ream, Chris Richards, Anthony Robinson, Miles Robinson. Had him this weekend, called the game. He's starting to look like the old Miles Robinson again. Joe Scally, Tolkien, whose team got relegated down to 2 Bundesliga. Austin Trusty, Caleb Wiley, and Walker Zimmerman. Jimmy's probably dreading missing this episode because Walker Zimmerman gets on the 60-man roster. Anything in there for you that stands out?
No, look, I think a really good group of defenders from, ranging from guys playing in MLS, guys playing in Europe. Good to see that Walker is on the list. Hopefully his concussion symptoms are subsiding and he's doing, well in rehab to try and get back out there, because that was a pretty gnarly scene a few months back. I'm watching a lot of MLS and specifically LAFC since I'm doing a podcast with Max. And look, Ryan Hollingshead, I would throw him in there too. Very versatile, a great pro. I know he's never really been a part of the national team, but he'd be an interesting one to see on there as well.
In the midfield, I mentioned the 2 Aronson brothers. Paxton earns his way on the books at Eintracht Frankfurt. Who knows what happens with him at the end of this season? Tyler Adams, Arston, Sebastian Berhalter gets into this. He's been the best box-to-box midfielder in MLS so far this season. Busio back in. He's got a big game this weekend coming up, trying to stave off relegation. Cardosa looks fit. Caden Clark gets back in. Luca Della Torre, the same. Max Dietz gets back in. Anelli gets back in. Gutierrez. Richie Ledesma gets the call from PSV, although not playing, didn't play on the weekend when they won a trophy. He was on the bench because Serginho Dest is playing in the right back. So thought it's interesting. He's coming in as a midfielder. Luna, McGlynn, Georgi Mihailovic gets another look. Milovic gets another look. Aiden Morris, Musa Tessman, Timothy Tillman, Sean Zawatsky, who I talked to Wilfred Nancy this weekend because I had the Hell is Real derby, and we asked him, who are the guys that are on your team sheet every single week? He said, the first guy on my team sheet is Sean Zawatsky. And Darlington Nagbe was the first guy that came to mind. I'm sure
Right.
Darlington Nagbe's not left off the list but he said this guy does everything. And by the way, he's been playing as a center back because they got injuries, so he's been filling in as a center back as well. You're the midfielder. What do you make of this list?
Look, I mean, you just rattled off 25 names, so it's tough to kind of say that there's too many omissions there that shouldn't be there. I love the fact that the guys that are playing well in MLS consistently, not only playing well but playing on a winning team. I think Berhalter is a guy that's been lights out this year, alongside with the other two that play on that team. Obviously not Americans, but he's been fantastic. Like you said, box to box, he does everything, both ends of the ball. I mean, he works his ass off defensively, and he's been getting on the end of things as well, right? A little bit like a young Michael Bradley when he was coming in and doing the dirty work on the defensive side and starting to get goals when he was at Heerenveen. And so there's some similarities there. Obviously, a little bit of a different position. Michael was a little bit deeper, and Berhalter plays a little bit higher. But I love this kid's engine, and it's good to see just the hard work and the perseverance and the winning, make a difference and get called in. I'd love to see him on the 23-man roster when it's all said and done.
Yeah, we were doing a little bit of math yesterday on another show that I was on, and I'd like to see him get an opportunity. Of course, I'm not a big January camp fan from the standpoint of judging players, right? Because then you put all these guys together. Like, I'd like to see guys that get a chance with the first team, right? And they're in with them because I think, Benny, it's just easier, right, to show yourself instead of being with 22 new guys who don't have caps. You get an opportunity to put one or two guys in with the first team. I don't know if it's going to happen for Sebastian Berhalter. He's earned his way onto this list. I hope he gets an opportunity, just gets a look. He clearly has made an impact on somebody on that coaching staff, including Mauricio Pochettino. So he makes this list. The forwards, always interesting. And it's always interesting to me how you list guys, right? How you put guys. Again, Ledesma is in as a midfielder, has played as a right back at PSV the entire season. And really, it's where he's made his name. The forwards, Ajiman, Balogun, Damian Downs, who was in the last camp but couldn't make it, Christian Pulisic, Josh Sargent, Quinn Sullivan listed as a forward from the Philadelphia Union, Malik Tillman, Brandon Vasquez, Brian White, Haji Wright, Griffin Yao. Haven't seen him in a while. We're really lost. I know he's been at Westerlo, but don't get to see him play. The Olympics is really my last image of him, and then some highlights online. And then Alex Zendejas down at Club America. These are guys that you look at the names and some of them you're like, where were they forever? I think Ajiman has made his way into being the guy, Benny, that offers Mauricio Pochettino and the national team a different profile. Not only that, I think he's got 3 goals in 4 games, right? So that always bodes well with the national team. But I think we're all kind of waiting for Balogun just to take the number 9 role by the scruff of the neck and say, you know what, this is mine, right? This is my position.
Yeah, well, I think we can. I don't know if we're all going to agree, but Balogun probably the most talented out of all those players. But again, as a 9, if you're not scoring, right, and that's a little bit of a confidence thing. It's a streaky thing at times. Unless you're one of the top forwards of the world, you're not going to be scoring all the time. So, you got to kind of talk about what other things can you bring to the table. And that's the one thing that I'm unsure with Balogun sometimes. If he's not scoring, how else is he helping us out, right? Is he providing assists? Is he making runs off the ball that opens up the game for other players? And I think you see that from Ajiman sometimes. I think did you say Brian White in the 60-man roster?
Yeah.
He is relentless in his movement off the ball. And, it reminds you of like guys like Brian McBride or Chris Wondolowski, guys that are just, they're not necessarily the cleanest on the ball. They're not going to, wow you in one-on-one situations and things like that. But inside the box, your movement is critical, right? And I think Brian White is outstanding. He's never standing still. He's always moving. And if you're going to get service into the box, whether it's in the air or on the ground, cutback balls or whatnot, Brian White might have a shout as well. It'd be interesting to see him with this group. Like you said, with the full team, guys that are connecting the game and creating chances more so than like a January camp roster. It'd be really, really, it'd be I think, an interesting visual to see how he fits in with like a guy like Pulisic, a guy like Weah, or whoever else they're fighting in on those wings, because he's been fantastic in MLS.
Yeah, just a couple things with the forwards. Balogun, he scored a couple weeks ago, right? It's his first goal since October, but he's missed the last 2 matches due to injury, right? So hopefully that gets sorted out. With regards to Alex Zendejas, remember, they've got that play-in match for the Club World Cup against LAFC. Should Club America qualify and beat LAFC, he will likely be taken off this list. So that's how you got to protect yourself with some.
And that's the same with some of the LAFC guys, right? You said there's Timothy Tillman's on that list.
Yep.
I don't know if there's anybody else, but that's also a question mark for those LAFC guys.
Yeah, I think he might be he might be the only Timothy Tillman might be the only one from LAFC on the list here. But yeah, so that's also, when you're putting this together, something Mauricio Pochettino has to think about. Look, I'm happy I'm happy to see some of these guys included based on what they've done at the club level. But the proof will be in the pudding, right? In the cup, when Mauricio Pochettino names what will have to be a minimum of 23 and a maximum of 26 players, 3 of those which have to be goalkeepers on the CONCACAF roster. So give me one surprise pick out of like one that, like, when the roster comes out, guys,
who's going to make it?
Yeah, that's going to make the 23 or 26, whatever he decides to go with here. What's one surprise that people go, man, I didn't think he would make the roster?
Well, I'm going to stick with Brian White, and I don't know if that's going to be a massive surprise, but I say that with this. I think one of the hardest things for a national team coach is to figure out how the pieces fit together, because a team is not the best 11 players, right? That's like the team of the year, the one that I did for Americans Abroad. You can put it on a piece of paper and it looks great, but at the end of the day, you got to see who matches up with what. And I just find Brian White fascinating with this team because of, like I said, it's his movement. He's not the focal point of the attack. If you put, a Christian Pulisic, a Timothy Weah, Adrian Zendejas, or whoever you fit around him, I think he can be a guy that, fits well with everybody else without being a focal point, and he's just going to get in the box. He's going to, when the service comes, he's going to be instrumental in putting the ball in the back of the net, and I hope he's on that roster.
There's a shout there from Ryan on your screen for Griffin. Yeah, look, he's a kid with a different dimension, right? Like slinky type kid who he finds ways to get in behind you, and he'd be an interesting one. I'm going to throw my name in the hat here for Alex Freeman, Orlando City. I've had 2 games over the last couple of weeks with them, and I'm really impressed with what I see. Serginho Dest, no doubt. Joe Scally, there's guys ahead of him. There's traffic in that position, but he might be a guy that they want to take a look at because he's got a lot to offer for a young player in that position. So there you have it. Mauricio Pochettino will get the 23 or 26-man roster, up to 26-man roster in a few weeks. Continue to drop those comments in there. Our producers behind the scenes will let us know which ones we want to throw up there. All right, we're going to step aside here when we come back. I teased it earlier. A couple of really notable performances this weekend, including a couple of trophies for the Americans get put in that hardware cabinet that we have to talk about, especially that FA Cup win for Chris Richards and Crystal Palace. Stay with us here on Call What You Want. We'll be right back.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale! Ronaldo! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
All right, welcome back into Call What You Want. Tony Mo with Benny Feilhaber. The other two, Jimmy and Charlie, they're across the pond right now working on their coaching license. So we've got you here for this week. Thanks for tuning in here. Again, hit like and subscribe, and we always love when you do that. All right, let's talk about what happened over the weekend here. Chris Richards four block shots, 12 clearances. Throw all the numbers out. Crystal Palace, Benny, wins their first ever trophy, FA Cup in epic style against Manchester City. I said yesterday, if you play that game 10 times, I think City wins that game 6 or 7 times. Crystal Palace wins it once, and maybe they draw and go to extra time in the other. Malik Tillman scored his 12th league goal of the season. Picked up a pretty big honor there as well. Damian Downs, an assist in promotion, securing 4-0 win against Kaiserslautern K-Town. He's dropping it on K-Town here. Zendejas, 90 minutes again, 2-1 win over Cruz Azul in the Clausura semifinal, second leg. And then Jonathan Klinsmann, we had him on our notable omissions list. He played 90 again in that 1-0 loss to Catanzaro in Serie B promotion. So his season over there. What sticks out to you on that graphic?
I mean, it's obviously the first one, Don. I mean, I was watching this game, and then now we've seen it on social media. The Crystal Palace fans, what was it, 100 some odd years that they haven't won a trophy? And look,
I want to say 153 years, if I remember hearing correctly.
Whatever it is, over a century, right? And I could tell you last year, or I'll tell you a quick individual story. I'm a Botafogo fan from Brazil, and 2 years ago, we had a 15-point lead going into the last 20 games and blew it, and it was disappointing. We hadn't won a trophy in like 30 years, and then last year, we won the double. We won the Brazilian League and we won the Libertadores. And I mean, me and my dad, on the phone, and we couldn't believe what happened. And now I'm watching these fans and I'm reliving all those emotions that I had, because the fans are crying, they're laughing, they're grabbing their face, they don't know what happened. They're hugging each other, family, friends. I mean, people they probably don't even know. It's unbelievable. That's what sport does for you. And so Crystal Palace winning that, and Chris Richards helping with a fantastic performance in the final and throughout the tournament, and Matt Turner as well, who obviously didn't play in the final but played some games in the FA Cup. And so it's fantastic for the Americans to win that trophy and to see that level of emotion amongst the fans there.
Is incredible. Yeah, he played every minute of all 6 FA Cup matches for Palace. By the way, they were founded 119 years ago, so it's been an awful long time. And Chris Richards, a big part of this. Matt Turner, of course, was on the bench. We got to give him props. He played, I believe, 2 games in the FA Cup during this run. There you see a great picture of him, one that they'll remember with that 3 games. He played with that trophy there. It's the oldest, most historic trophy in the world, league trophy that people battle for. It's so coveted in England. Again, I don't think that if they play that game on Monday, that Crystal Palace wins the game, to be honest. But there's games like that where you have to survive, and Chris Richards was in the battle for 90 minutes. He literally had to be tuned in, locked in for 90 minutes, and that's just a massive. It's one of those things, right? They can't take it away from you ever.
No, and it's not even just the final, though, Tony. I mean, I watched the game against Aston Villa in the semifinal. They played fantastic that game. It wasn't just sit back and counter the entire time. They played some really good soccer in that game, and were deserved winners against Aston Villa, who are one of the teams in form as well right now. So look, I can't remember every game that they played, but they had a very, very positive run in this FA Cup to win this trophy. It wasn't just one game that they sat back, got 1 goal early. So unbelievable performance from them. And like I said, to me, the images that'll be, framed in my mind are those of the fans, kind of like that one that we saw with Chris Richards. So much emotion. It's so raw, and that's the beauty in sport. And I love that, man.
Yeah, amazing scenes for Tillman over at PSV as well, and Serginho Dest. Richie Ledesma was on the bench. Of course, Ricardo Pepi not able to play. 6 games to go in the season. Ajax has an amazing lead in Eredivisie, an amazing lead, and they blow it. Well, I should say PSV took advantage of some of the frailties. Ajax doesn't win in their last 4 games. They have 2 wins. They have 2 draws. They end up losing the title on the last day of the season. by 1 point. PSV ended up with 79 points. Ajax ended up with 78 points. And it forced Francesco Frarioli, who was literally, as they're waiting for the result, literally crying on the field. He resigned with immediate effect after the game. Just an amazing run for I'll say the four Americans, because Ricardo Pepi did play a big role in this at the beginning of the season. Every point clearly mattered in this title run. But I don't know if we've seen a collapse like that in a long, long time, man.
No. Well, I have 2 years ago, like I said, with my team in Brazil, but Ajax had a 9-point lead with 5 games left. In the next 4 games, can't win one of those games. Drops from first to second with 1 game to go. And then even in the last game, Ajax was up 1-0. PSV was up 1-0. Then PSV gave up a goal to go to 1-1. And in that moment, Ajax was back in first with maybe, 30 minutes to go in the season. So obviously PSV gets the goal, the 2-1 from De Jong, and then Tillman is able to half volley that one home to kind of, settle the nerves, so to speak, there at Sparta Stadium. But what an eventful last 5 games and last match day there. Unbelievable PSV, disappointing from the Ajax perspective. I'd say that Ajax more so gave up the championship than PSV, earned it. But hey, they stole it right underneath from them. So big time from those Americans.
It is incredible that this happened. It was I want to say fun to watch because we're looking at 4 Americans trying to win a trophy. But if you're an Ajax fan, which there are millions, you're in a lot of pain right now. All right, I'm gonna do this because it's in the rundown. I don't want to do it, but I'm gonna jump over to Serie A right now, where my team, Milan, and Christian Pulisic's team. Oof. My gosh, just completely capitulated again. They don't qualify for anything in Europe. They are knocked out of everything. I said Sunday that 38 games don't lie, Benny, right? 38 games in a season don't lie. Now, Christian Pulisic, he's done his part in this thing. There's some conversation about whether he should stay at Milan. This will be the first time that Christian won't play in Europe in his career, right? When he's at Dortmund, they were in Europe all the time. When he's at Chelsea, all the way to a Champions League, becoming a Champions League winner. He was at the front of that. There's the numbers. They bear out 17 goals. That's first on the team. He's XG, is what it is. You guys know how I feel about that. 28 goal contributions. Who knows what happened the last day of the season against Monza? Really doesn't matter. There's discussion about him. Let me just give you my take on this. I don't think Christian Pulisic leaves. Everyone says, well, if you want to be a top footballer in the world, you need to play in Champions League. I think he's at a massive club. I think he's got massive responsibility. I think there's massive upside if he can get them back into Champions League. Remember, in the beginning of the year, I said, Benny, if this particular Milan team qualified for Champions League, it would be a big feat. I didn't know that they'd get knocked out of Europe completely, but I thought it'd be a big feat. I think he stays there. In some strange way, the lesser number of games, because it'll only be Serie A and it'll be Coppa Italia, that might help his body going into the World Cup. But from a fiery standpoint, from a competitive standpoint, you want to play in Champions League, and that's what he went to Milan for, and he's going to miss out on that. Of course, it's his fault as much as it is everyone else's fault. You're part of a team. But that really sucks in his case to miss out on that. But I don't think he leaves Milan under any circumstance.
Man, I was ready here to debate you and disagree with you because I thought for sure you were going to say he's got to go somewhere to play Champions League. I wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment. And I think it's actually a blessing in disguise. I hope he stays at Milan. I hope he's listening right now. And, for him, he's going to have a massive year. Right. And let's be honest, I think any player, especially an American player of his caliber, the World Cup is the number one thing on the schedule for the next 12 months. Right. Starting, obviously, it's in the World Cup, or it's in the summer of 2026, which is about 12 months away. But that has to be the focal point. You want to get there healthy. You want to get there in form. And I think it's a blessing in disguise. Less games, like you said. Does AC Milan deserve to be in European competition? Absolutely not. And it is better for them. That's the proof is in the pudding. Like you said, 38 games right there. They didn't qualify. This is what they need. They need to focus on Serie A. They need to focus on finishing at winning the league or ultimately trying to get back into Champions League the following season. And Christian Pulisic needs to be one of those guys that leads the team there, puts the team on his shoulders, plays every minute of every single game, 1 game per week, setting up and culminating in, like I said, qualifying for Champions League, maybe winning Serie A, and then being in the best form of his entire life going into the World Cup of 26. I think it's a blessing in disguise. I hope he stays in Milan and owns up to that kind of pressure that will be on him if he stays. I think it could work out to benefit the U.S. national team.
Yeah, in the end, and there's something when you're at a massive club like that, and Milan is a massive club. Make no mistake about it. There's something to be said if you're part of the group that gets you there, just like what's happening with Napoli this year, right? Napoli didn't have European football. They had one thing to focus on. They bring one of the best managers in the world into the club. Singular focus. Now they're on the verge, and those games will be Friday across Paramount Plus. The Inter game and the Napoli game, they got a chance to win a Scudetto. I don't know if Milan's going to be in that position, but there's no reason to believe that the focus won't be just clearly on Serie A. They had their chance to get to Europe. They lost to Bologna in the finals of the Coppa Italia, which qualifies you for Europa League. So I think it's a big miss in the end. But I'm trying to find the silver lining, and we're trying to find the silver lining in this thing, and that might be it. In the end, it's not as if people say, "Okay, you're missing out on Champions League football." It's not as if you're not playing good games every week, right? It's not as if you're playing in one of the top 5 leagues in Europe. So yeah, we'll see how it turns out. The hope is that obviously he stays healthy and he continues to develop. And I do want to, but I want to get to Damian Downs here in a second. But I want to stay on Pulisic, if you will, because you and I had a discussion in our production meeting yesterday about Christian growing as a leader. I'm under because I want people to hear your thoughts on this. I'm under the mindset that Christian is Christian, right? And we're kind of seeing who he is. He's matured over the years. He's better at interviews. He looks more comfortable in front of the camera. He's okay putting himself out there. He's okay answering, tough questions, taking the blame when it's his blame, not taking credit when people want to give him credit, because that's what guys do for the most part. But you're under the mindset that he still has to become a leader, not only for this team but for the national team. A little more of a leader, I should say.
Yeah, and I don't think it has to be anything, that he has to become a different person. I think you look at soccer, and I'll make this metaphor a little bit. You get a really good soccer player that's an introvert, doesn't like to talk very much, doesn't like to socialize. At the end of the day, I'm going to bring that player in as the coach of this player and tell him, look, I have no problem with you being quiet in the locker room. You don't have to, socialize with all the guys. You don't have to be the funny guy or whatever. But when you're on the field, you need to communicate. That's part of soccer, right? It's just like saying somebody that's, lazy in life, oh, I'm not going to run it in the game. Well, you have to. That's part of the game. You have to run, you have to talk, you have to pass, you have to dribble, shoot, etc. With Christian, I'm not asking him to be, a vocal leader, but he's got to lead by example a little bit, right? And I think he's starting to do that. But when you have guys like Theo Hernandez on that team, Rafael Leao, and several others, I think it's harder for him to kind of truly express himself and put the team on his back, so to speak. If those guys were to leave, which is a possibility with, AC Milan not playing European football, I think it could generate a locker room where he can kind of shine a little bit more, right? Not asking him to wear the captain's armband and tell everybody what to do and start screaming at people on the field. That's not what I'm saying. But everybody can see as him being one of those guys that's going to, carry the team, take the team to new heights or back to old heights, so to speak. And I think that could be a really big benefit for him as a player, for the U.S. team in the World Cup. And look, European soccer, yes, you want to play European soccer as often as possible, and you want to play at the highest levels. But Christian is not one of those players that we question whether he's good enough to play. So having 1 year without European soccer at the end could be a really big benefit to his health and to the national team in the World Cup.
Yeah, like I see the point. Yeah, as long as people aren't asking him to be a vocal leader, because he's never going to be Puyol or Gattuso
No.
or he's going to be more. And again, I'm not comparing players, so don't at me with any of this stuff. He's going to be more like the Kevin De Bruyne type of guy, right? Who does it. And I saw someone put a message up there about doing with his feet. He needs to become the guy that, when things are bad, that's the guy we lean on, right? Rafa Leao's been that guy in the group. He's been a great compliment to that. He needs to be that guy now. One last one here. We mentioned it. Damian Downs. Cologne beat Kaiserslautern 4-0 on the weekend. They get promoted to the Premier League. Massive accomplishment for Damian Downs. And now we're going to get our first look at him, potentially, Benny, at the Gold Cup.
Yeah, man, look, they did what they needed to do in the final day of the season. My old team, Hamburg, didn't get it done, but they were already promoted and probably partying too much throughout the whole week to win the last game and win the title of the Zweite Bundesliga. But FC Cologne, they get in there, they get back to the first division. Really big accomplishment. It'll be big things for him, not only this summer, we might see him, but also next year in the Erste Bundesliga.
Yeah, I think I said Premier League. Bundesliga obviously is where he got promoted. But again, we'll get a look at him and see what it looks like. But that's another massive accomplishment for another American player. So good things happening for American players. All right, we're going to step aside here and we come back. I mentioned we got full coverage all across Paramount Plus of the U.S. Open Cup. Tonight it starts. Benny and I will be on that coverage. 2 games tonight, 6 games tomorrow. We got you covered start to finish and a Golazzo show tomorrow, which I love doing, the little whip around, man, because it's like 100 miles an hour. We're checking out all these games. I don't know if you've done one before, but it's a heck of a lot of fun.
I haven't done one, but I've watched and I love it, man. It's like the soccer version of Red Zone, so it's the best.
Yeah. U.S. Open Cup round of 16 preview on the other side. Stay with us.
I know they know who I am. Jaden Shaw faces her former club. North Carolina battles San Diego in an NWSL showdown. Sunday on CBS Sports Network. They know me.
All right, welcome back into Call It What You Want. Tony and Benny with you this week. We got you a little Open Cup preview coming up here. New England Revolution against the Chicago Fire. That's on Golazzo Network. San Jose Earthquakes against the Portland Timbers. That's on CBS Sports Network. Of course, all of these games, as I mentioned, you can see across Paramount Plus. 6 games tomorrow. 5 of those will be included in our Golazzo show with Nico Cantor, Jillian Sakovits, myself, and Benny will be on the calls for those. Let's talk about tonight's game. I said at the beginning of the competition, they asked us to name some teams, Benny, that
I remember
needed this, probably wanted this. It's important for the managers. It's important for the clubs. 2 teams came up in that conversation. I had the Chicago Fire. Charlie had the New England Revolution. Not quite sure who you picked for your team in this thing, but they square off tonight. Who sticks out for you? Look, Bruce Arena, San Jose Earthquakes have not been good in the U.S. Open Cup in their history. Portland Timbers, they're a team under Phil Neville that I think will value this to some extent, right? Because he'd like to win a trophy in America for sure. We'll use all 8 games here. What teams for you that stick out and managers maybe for you that stick out that need this thing?
I think you're spot on. Both you and Charlie, I think, are spot on with that first game being massive tonight with Chicago Fire at the New England Revolution. I just think that there's this aura about the U.S. Open Cup that maybe American coaches understand a little bit better than the international ones. And so I think Berhalter is going to want to win this trophy big time. And what U.S. Open Cup does, look, there's no doubt about it. U.S. Open Cup is an easier trophy to win than MLS Cup because by the time you're into the round of 16, you need to win 4 games. And this is the time where you start playing the MLS teams. And some teams don't put their first team out there. They try and, save some legs for the weekend. They put some guys that haven't been playing as much. So if you really want to go for it, you have an opportunity to, and there's some teams that truly need it, right? Chicago, although they've won, I think, 4 US Open Cups, it's been a while, and they haven't been successful in the league in so long. To me, it's a perfect opportunity for them to get some confidence, hopefully win a trophy if you're Greg Berhalter in the Fire, and put yourself back on the map. I think that's one thing that you've been able to see with some of the champions of past years. The Houston Dynamo, Ben Olsen did it a couple of years ago. And then, you saw what they became a little bit. And so you kind of see the pathway for some of those teams. I think New England Revolution with Caleb Porter, also a team that kind of needs a little bit of a boost. And look, they went through some really tough times last year, and in the beginning of this year, they're starting to win a lot of games on the heels of Carlos Heel, who's just bringing the team along with him. But this would be a trophy that would, bode really well for Revs fans and Caleb Porter. And then going to the opposite side, you said San Jose hasn't had a lot of success in this competition. However, they haven't had Bruce Arena as their coach either. So I think he'll put a lot of emphasis in playing at home. I think San Jose probably takes that game. And I would say that Chicago's probably going to put, I want to say, a little bit more complete roster and lineup out there than New England. So I would take Chicago and San Jose today to win those games.
Well, they against Detroit City, if you remember, they put out a full lineup.
Did they?
Yeah, you'd have thought he was playing an MLS Saturday game. I mean, he basically put everybody in the game. Remember, they've won it in 98, 2000, 03, and 06. They're looking to be the first team before coming into the league in 2000 that wins it 5 times. New England's won it in 2007. San Jose's best finish was a semifinal. They did it twice, in 04 and 17. Portland was also in 13 in a semifinal. So not a lot of success when it comes to those numbers. The other team I looked at in this thing is the New York Red Bulls, only because an original team, okay, name change, I get it. They were the Metro Stars to New York Red Bulls, but a 96er, if you will. Still looking to put a trophy in. They've been to 2 finals. They're coming off a final. They got Sandro Schwartz, who I like as a manager. I love chatting with him, an engaging guy. Players love playing for him. They've lost 3 of their last 4 matches in MLS. They got to play Eric Quill's FC Dallas, who's won this championship twice, albeit one of them was almost 10 years ago in 2016. I think those 2 managers in particular, I would put in that category as well, of guys that would want to use this to kind of make a mark and win something in the league.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, but I was looking through the games here, and I actually have another sneaky pick that I really like for
got?
US Open Cup, Minnesota United this year. I think they're one of those teams. They went to the finals, if I'm not mistaken, the year that they lost to Atlanta United.
Yeah, 2019. They went to the finals.
But I like Minnesota's been an up-and-coming team over the last couple seasons. They've been very, very good this year. I like the way that they play. Their style fits tournament games where, they're solid defensively and they counter and they're efficient on the attacking end. I really like them. They're playing at home tomorrow night against St. Louis City, which is a team that also needs some success, but I don't see them getting it tomorrow. Minnesota is a team I could see getting a deep run in this tournament, maybe winning it all.
Yeah, we got to talk about the one cup set here, the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. They beat NYC on the corner kick. We had Robbie Mertz on. You can catch that one on the Golazzo YouTube channel. A great interview, a guy that's you had a little interaction with, I think, in Colorado.
Yeah.
He got drafted in Major League Soccer. He's one of those guys that didn't make it in MLS, but has found a home in his home in Pittsburgh under Bob Lilly, one of the generational managers of our time. I saw a stat yesterday. He's the longest tenured coach in USL history. In 24 years, I have it right here. In 24 years, he's won 67% of his games.
What is he playing? Is he playing? Is there no draws? Is there shootouts after?
I was reading that on US Soccer's the preview and all that stuff getting ready for tonight. And I said, holy shit, 67% of that's an awful lot of games. But the guy's been around doing it for a long, long time. He loves Pittsburgh. It's a great stadium, that Highmark Stadium, to see a game. We asked Robbie about that yesterday. But man, that's I don't know. They're playing the Philadelphia Union, a team that's first in the Eastern Conference right now. They just beat Atlanta United 1-0. They did go to penalty kicks in the against Indy 11 in the round of 32. The Philadelphia Union did, so it should be a fun one. But man, that's I don't know. I'm not rooting against the Philadelphia Union. I have nothing, but I'm rooting for a cup set. That's all I'm saying.
It's David versus Goliath, right? And Philly's got the home game as well, and they're on a really good run of form in MLS. So you would think they have everything to win, but it's the U.S. Open Cup. This is why we love it. And I think, look, I can stand here and say I'm looking for that cup set. So let's go Pittsburgh. We love the USL championship teams, making deep runs, and hopefully they see themselves into the quarterfinals.
Yeah, again, I'm not rooting against Philly. I'm just rooting for Pittsburgh, if that can be possible. All right, from one coach that's been winning a lot throughout his career, another coach who has won a couple times, 2 MLS trophies to be exact. He's been in a final 4 times, lost 2 of those up in Toronto. Greg Vanney. I know it's been a topic of discussion. I thought we'd touch on it here. No wins. 10 losses, 4 draws on the season, a miserable start, worst ever by a country mile from a team that's a defending champion, Benny, in Major League Soccer, gets a contract extension through 2028. Again, one of those things we were talking about in production yesterday. I'll give you my thoughts in a second. I want to get your thoughts on the timing of this. And look, I know in Europe it's been fodder for a lot of conversation about how can this happen? These Americans don't know what the hell they're doing. I have my thoughts on this. I'll get yours first.
Well, the timing is not the best, obviously. I think it's a weird timing. And look, if you pull the curtain back a little bit, I think you have to understand why this happened. And from everything I've heard, they won the trophy last year. They were the best team in MLS. They were fantastic to watch, the most entertaining team to watch, in my opinion, last year. And they ultimately won the whole thing. And so, from that, I think Greg Vanney's more than earned a new contract, and the conversation started during the offseason, and it just wasn't able to be completed because both sides were probably not agreeing on whatever number of years or whatever number of money per year, Vanney was going to receive with his new contract. And it kind of dragged out. And the negative part is that it dragged out to a 14 game without a win, and so it became a really weird timing to announce it, to finalize it. I think that's why we saw it. Could it have been where, I don't know how these things work, but could it have been that it was something that was agreed upon, and then maybe they could hold off on it until, LA Galaxy start turning it around? Because I can't see them just not turning this around at some point. It might be tough to make the playoffs at this point because they're so far behind. But at the end of the day, they have a good team. They have a few injuries that are going to come back soon. You saw Gabriel Peck and you saw Paintsel playing in this last game against LAFC. Obviously, when Ricky Puig gets back, I just can't see this team being anything but one of the better teams in this league. Will it be enough to make the playoffs? I don't know, but they could have maybe waited to announce it. But I think that's the decision they made. And so it's a weird decision. It's obviously a terrible start. And look, I think that some of it is 100% on Vanney. He's shown that he can be a top manager by winning multiple MLS Cups, one with Toronto, one with the Galaxy. But even with the injuries and the players that have left the club, he lost Mark Delgado. He lost Dejan Joveljic.
Brugman.
Brugman as well, who was the MVP of the final. And obviously the 3 DPs who have been, either completely out or in and out. I think even with the roster that he has, without all those players, you can't lose, you can't not win 14 games in a row in a league that's built for parity. So that's on Vanney, but I think we'll see that turn around at some point.
And get drubbed by the Red Bulls, right? Was that 7-0 or 7-1, whatever it was?
7-0.
I mean, it was just a drubbing, and I mean, they look so out of it in that game. They've scored 12 goals, conceded 33 on the season. As I mentioned, 10 losses, 4 draws. They haven't won at home in 6 games. Road record, okay. Obviously, they haven't won, but 8 games, you might look at that. If they won some games at home, it'd be different. I'm with you. I don't think that they make the playoffs because they're already 14 points below the playoff line. When Ricky Puig comes back, a massive piece of the puzzle, clearly. And you mentioned Paintsel and Peck coming back. Those 3 last year with Joveljic were outstanding to watch. The question came up, and this is what started the conversation. What will it take for Greg Vanney to get fired? I just think that they've made a decision to say, Greg Vanney is our guy, right? He's our guy. We're sticking by him. It helps also when Ricky Pooch goes on social media and is constantly backing the manager. And then when this announcement comes out, puts the clapping emojis, the clapping hands on his Twitter and all of that stuff. And that stuff helps, right? Because clearly your superstar is saying, no, this is the guy to lead us. I think what they did last year was they sold themselves out for winning a championship, spent $20 million on Peck and Paintsil. That benefited Vanney. Keep in mind, though, his contract is through 2028, so it's 3.5 years of a deal. If he doesn't make the playoffs this time around, it will be 3 of the 4 years in LA that he's not making the playoffs. So that's always going to be a question mark with the fans, right? That's always going to be, do we need to buy a complete team in order for you to win a championship? Can you win something? I'm in your mindset. I've had them 4 times, I think, this year. And I come out and I look at the players and I'm like, the roster they have right now is better than the roster that they're playing against, but they're being completely outplayed in this game. Right. And that's the part that's baffling to me.
And it seems like with Vanney and the Galaxy throughout his tenure there, it's feast or famine, right? Because the one year that they made the playoffs, they won the whole thing. And so, look, it is not that difficult, as we all know, to make the playoffs in MLS. There's a lot of teams that make the playoffs. Now it's 9 out of 14 or 15. I think 15 now. So it's more than half the teams. It's not a difficult measure. And so we've seen that difficulty in the years that don't go well. But I think that what the Galaxy ownership and Will Kuntz and GM have seen is that he is the guy when everyone's healthy, right? He's proven it with when he has the top players, Paintsil, Peck, Puig. Obviously, Jovic is gone, so he's not going to get him back. But can Christian Ramirez do the job, or can they, move the pieces around? Maybe Paintsil plays the 9. He played the 9 when he came in against LAFC there at the end of the game. So can he move these pieces around when he gets all these players back and be the coach that you saw last year? And obviously, like you said, Ricky Puig backing the coach up, and Ricky Puig is arguably the best player in this league at this point, right? He's definitely the best player on LA Galaxy, and he's one of the top players in the league. You have him backing you up, and you're going to make your stars happy. Well, then maybe that's the best decision. Now, we're not seeing it right now, but who knows how quickly they can turn it around when everybody's back.
Yeah, Matt says here on your screen there, absolute insanity to give him a new contract. Look, I want to try and get it in my brain, right? Because I like to think about these things like you're just talking about logically, like everyone that they're missing, everyone that they had to get rid of. The other thing in the equation, Benny, and because you've been behind the scenes, you don't know what the planning is moving forward, right? You don't know what they're saying with regards to, okay, I don't know all their contract situations, but they've got them written on a big wall and everyone's studying them every single day and saying, this is what it's going to look like in June during the transfer market. This is what it's going to look like in the offseason. And by next year, we need to be here, right? Whatever that here is for them. Those are the conversations we're not privy to in this thing, right? And I think those are really, really important conversations. I do question the timing of this whole thing. They could have signed this thing behind closed doors and not announced anything. I wonder why they had to come out with the announcement at this point. Maybe to deflect a couple things that are going on, change the conversation, let the players know, yeah, we're behind all of you and we're behind the manager. That might have something to do with it as well. And that's really important. You got it. Once you lose the guys, I mean, that's it. There's no getting them back.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one. I think that the reason, if there is any reason other than just, hey, it happened, so we're going to announce it, I think the reason is for that. They don't care about the outside noise, right? Who cares what fans think, what pundits think, what everybody else thinks? Like, we're going to do what we're going to do because we think it's the right decision. And the positive is we're going to let all our players know it as well. And so if everybody inside that building is connected, regardless of the outside noise, that could build strength in that building. And maybe that's one of the things that they're looking for.
Well, I was around that building last year during the finals. They were connected, man. You'd have never thought that this would have turned out this way so early. But it's a crazy moment to think that a guy would get a new contract. But I just got to believe that this is their guy. Let's see, what do we got? It looks like we got something for Benny. Your Someone wanted to know, Benny, what's your best Gold Cup related story or memory?
I mean, that one's easy. 2007 when I scored the game winner against Mexico. I think my brain, I knew my parents were there. My family was there, my parents and my sister.
Nice.
And I mean, it's Soldier Stadium, right? I don't know, 65,000 plus or whatever it is. And as soon as I scored, I think I went back to youth soccer mode. And I'm like, I'm going to go run.
You dropped a hammer, by the way, on that one.
I blacked out as well afterwards. But I think I went into youth soccer mode thinking my parents were just hanging out by the sideline. And I started running towards the section where I remember that they were sitting. It was kind of like midfield on the opposite side of the bench. By this time, I had already turned
First
around.
time you ever could run away from bees on that one.
Yeah. He's almost walking over there. I'm sprinting and he's barely jogging. So, but yeah, I started running as if I'm going to go celebrate with my parents. And I realized, oh my God, I'm in a 65,000 person stadium. All right, let's make a U-turn and run towards the bench and celebrate with my teammates. So it was one of those blackout moments that we've heard from Will Ferrell in the movies. But it was quite a memory.
Wow, what a great way to end this thing. Look, it's been fun here. We covered a lot, and of course, the big news: the U.S. men's national team roster drop. We'll get the 23 here shortly. We'll figure that out as well. We'll have a show around that. Don't forget to join us again on Thursday, Benny and I, 10 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. on the right coast, 7 a.m. on that other coast. On the Golazzo America YouTube channel, we'll break down what happened over the last 2 nights of Gold Cup. Again, that coverage begins tonight. We've got 2 games tonight. Then tomorrow, 7:30, we got a whip around show, the Golazzo show. 5 games in that slate. 1 later game. We'll continue to cover that. And on Thursday, we'll talk about it all when we come back. And don't forget, leave your comments, hit like and subscribe. If you got any Charlie and Jimmy bashing over the next week, this is your time right now.
Send it over.
Time to do it. You guys have a great day. We'll catch you on Thursday. Thanks so much for joining us.